Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here. Give me a moment, let me adjust the audio to make sure that every one of you guys can hear me loud and clear. Okay, alright, so today is the first time I'm doing this stream, right? It's basically a game week preview stream, right? Where I'm gonna answer a lot of the questions that have been put to me, whether it's on my socials, whether it's on YouTube, comments, whatsoever. To basically give us a preview as to what's happening in FPL right now. There's a lot of us, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of double game week announcements, as you guys can see on the screen. There's also a lot of projections. There's also a lot of decisions to be made this game week about whether we want to go for double game week players, whether you want to plan for the long term, should we triple captain Haaland. All these questions are going to be answered today, right? So it may be a little bit long, so feel free to pop in and out. I will timestamp the stream for those of you guys who are rewatching this as a replay. So basically, we're gonna keep this as a discussion, right? So I'm basically what I'm gonna do, right, is instead of telling you guys what you guys should be doing, I think I'm gonna present the information or what I'm considering, right, to everyone, so that you guys can kind of make an informed decision yourselves as well. All right, so some caveats here. I'm a little bit sick, right? So I may mute the mic now here and then to clear my throat, but hopefully you guys are all right with that. And also, right, let's just quickly go through what we're gonna do today. Right, so first we're gonna take a look on the screen, right, which is the landscape of FPL moving forward, right? So what are the blanks, what are the doubles, and how are we going to plan for them, right? And next we'll talk about triple captaining Haaland. I know a lot of people are wondering whether we should do that or not. And third, we're gonna talk about City assets, which ones to go for. That's also another one that a lot of people are thinking about, right? And lastly, Salah to KDB, right? Should we be doing Salah to KDB? Is that a move that I would recommend, or is that a move that I would be doing myself? Right, I'll be going into that. And just one last question before we move into the quickfire Q&As at the end, right, is whether we should bring Kane in. So I'm thinking about that myself as well. I did a bit of research into the stats to kind of see whether we should, whether the stats back it up or not. Right, so for now, right, we're just going to kick things off straight away, right, talking about what we have on the screen right now. If at any point in time the audio or whatsoever, because I'm just changed up some equipment here, so if you guys find that the audio is not clear now and then, please let me know. Alright, so let's first talk about the landscape moving forward. Right, so firstly, there's going to be a couple of double game weeks, and also there's going to be a couple of blank game weeks. Right, so as you guys can see on the screen, there's going to be a few double game weeks: double game week 29, double game week 34, right, double game week 37, and also a couple of mini doubles as well, right? Of course, all of this is according to Ben Krellin on Twitter. Please drop him a follow, right? His information is really critical right now if you want to plan properly. So looking at these doubles, right, they could be big or medium doubles, and that's usually when we want to plan to use our chips, right? So that's something we need to consider as well. For the mini doubles, I think at this point it's still uncertain what the mini doubles are. There are a couple of projections from Ben Krellin saying that Man United could double against Palace and Leeds in game week 22. So that's also a possible, I guess, triple captain opportunity for Marcus Rashford. I'll cover that later for those of you guys who are interested in that, right? But moving on to the blank game weeks here, there's game week 25, which Ben Krellin has predicted 2 blanks there, right? A maximum of 2 blanks. Right, and then for game week 28, there's going to be 4 blanks, and for game week 32, it's going to be 3 blanks. Right, so with this in mind, with the landscape of FPL moving forward being like this, right, I think my current thoughts at this point is that there are 2 main windows to wildcard. For me, I think wildcarding in game week 29 or wildcarding in game week 33 to bench boost into game week 34. Right, those are the 2 main windows I see to use the wildcard. Right, and on top of that as well, I also see 2 main windows, right, where we can use the bench boost. So one of it is game week 34, right, where we can bench boost that big double game week there, right, and the other opportunity is also game week 37. Right, I don't think I'll be using the bench boost in game week 29 that early as well. Right, and On to the triple captain as well. I don't foresee myself using the triple captainship in Game Week 37 because I think by then the title could have been decided. Right, a couple of things could come into play as well. Right, the Champions League games, the semi-finals, the finals, etc. Big games which could cause some players to lose minutes here and there. Right. So currently that's what I'm thinking, and I will touch on this later, but it also eats into the fact that the triple captainship could be blocked by other chips that we want to use. Right, so currently at this point, I'm thinking about a couple of strategies here. Right, I could dead end into Game Week 28, right, which has 4 blanks, and then wildcard into Game Week 29, right, free hit in either Game Week 32 or 37, and then bench boost in 34. Right, it's a little bit of a mouthful, right, but essentially what I'm doing is I'm wildcarding early in Game Week 29, and then I'm free hitting as and when I need to, and I'm bench boosting at 34 or 37. Right, so that's the idea right now, but there are a couple of other strategies that I'm planning as well, right, which is a wildcard in a free hit in 29, right, and then a wildcard in 33 to bench boost into Game Week 34. So currently, this is what I'm thinking. But it may be a little bit too early. I think we still don't know the doubles and the blanks that are going to happen, right? Ben does have some projections, but at the end of the day, they are still projections, right? So it's still too early to say what we should or shouldn't do. But at this point, I think it's important to know that coming up, there are going to be these blanks and doubles, and how we want to navigate those game weeks moving forward are going to affect whether we should use certain chips now and then or not, especially the triple captain chip, which I'll touch on in a bit. All right, so let's move on to the next portion. Right, I'll monitor the chat as and when we go so that I can interact with you guys as well. I kind of did it in this format so that if you guys feel like you want to chime in and let me know what you guys think as well, I can kind of see and we could have a discussion. Right, so please get involved. Those in the chat as well. Thanks for coming down. Right, VJ, GV as well. Thank you guys for coming down. So let's move on to the next portion. I don't want this stream to be too long so that people can watch it back as a replay as well. So for this portion, it's basically about triple captaining Haaland. Right, so I know this this idea of triple captaining Haaland has crossed a lot of people's minds. Right, so for me, let's talk about triple captaining Haaland as it is. Right, meaning that let's take other people out of the equation. Let's take Rashford out of the equation. Let's take Salah out of the equation. And just focus on where we want to triple captain Haaland first. Right, there are a couple of other potential double game weeks for him. Right, but they could be good ones. They could be better. They could be worse ones. Right, so we do have to kind of take a look and see whether we want to triple captain Haaland in those weeks as well. Right, so game week 29. Right, it could be Liverpool at home and West Ham at home. Right, so that is one potential double game week. But as we can see from Brent Krellin, right, he said that West Ham will only be a double game week fixture if only if West Ham or Man City reach the FA Cup quarterfinals. So basically, if Man City gets knocked out or West Ham gets knocked out, right, then basically they are not going to have that double. Right, so Game week 29 in itself, I think it doesn't look like a very good double game week because they play Liverpool, right? So already it's quite a difficult one. And on top of that, in most of my plans and my chip strategy that I mentioned just now, I'm probably going to use a wildcard or a particular chip, in game week 29, right? So if that's the case, I think I can take triple captaining Haaland in game week 29 out of the equation, right? And then as for game week 34 as well, I'm probably going to either bench boost or wildcard in that. I'm probably going to bench boost or maybe free hit in game week 34, right? Same goes for 37, right? So I want to have the option open basically. Right? I don't want to limit myself into having to play the triple captainship then and essentially blocking my other chips. Right? So that is one of the things I'm thinking about. And essentially, I think looking at these fixtures, the only good double game week here for Haaland is Fulham away and potentially West Ham at home or Brighton. Brighton away. Yeah, so that is essentially the only time that I think would be better, right? Because of the other double game weeks having tougher opponents. So at this point, for game week 34, I've already kind of ascertained that I'm going to use a chip there. So for me, it's come down to either game week 23 or game week 20 right now, right? To whether to use the triple captain chip on Haaland or not. right? So there are a couple of other factors in play, of course, right, when we're triple captaining Haaland, right? So firstly is, as what I've mentioned, right, that other chips may block the triple captain chip later on. If we get rid of it now, we use it quickly, right, then we can just get on with the rest of the season with more flexibility, right? So that's one of the ways we could do it, right? Another way, right, is instead of playing the triple captainship now, right, we could just wait for, I will mention this later, right, Marcus Rashford at the end, as the last point there, but there are a couple of pockets of space where we could see good double game weeks for others as well, and essentially at the end of the day, for the triple captainship, we just need to make sure that we use it on a time when we think the triple captain will be the most effective. So as of now, right, what I'm thinking is, I'm really 50-50, right, but I'll lay everything out for you guys. So future double game weeks for City are not confirmed, as well, as I mentioned, right? And for this particular double game week, right, where Man City play Man United and Spurs, right, Haaland is very likely to start both games. He's expected to get really good minutes, and on top of that, he will be well rested between the double game week games, right? One is on Saturday and one is on Thursday. So he will be very well rested between the double game week games. So all these factors actually kind of point towards maybe now being the time to use the triple captainship. Right? But at the same time, right, Man United and Spurs aren't the easiest opponents, right? That's clear as well. I think we can agree that they are not the easiest opponents. And at this point, I think Manchester City's form is also a little bit questionable, right? They are experimenting a little bit. Some players are dropping off in form. Some players are doing all right. Others are players like Cancelo, they're losing minutes here and there. Foden as well, he's just dropped off. So now seems like a point where Man City are kind of dropping off. So in that sense, it may or may not be a very good time to use it as well. So these are what kind of pulling me back from using the triple captainship, right? And then I've mentioned Rashford there, Crystal Palace at home, Leeds at home. Double game week 22 is a potential. Ben Crellin already said that there is a potential for this double game week 22 to happen for Manchester United. And Rashford is on fire. I know I may get a bit of backlash for this, for recommending Rashford ahead of Haaland, but I actually do think that is a decent opportunity for a triple captain as well, right? At the end of the day, it is about using the triple captainship at when we think our captain will do the best. And if you're looking at home games back-to-back for Marcus Rashford, Crystal Palace at home and Leeds at home, those look really good, right? Those look really good. So I think that also begs the question, right, whether we should look away from Haaland, just because, as I mentioned just now, we're not going to want to use it in later game weeks if on Haaland. So for Haaland, it's probably looking like it's either game week 20 where he has Manchester United and Tottenham, or game week 23, right, where he has Arsenal and Aston Villa, right? So both aren't that good, right? But if it comes down to Haaland, it's either one of these 2 weeks for me, right? And then there are other players that we can triple captain, like Rashford, Crystal Palace at home, Leeds at home, right, as I mentioned. So we can look away. So at this point, I think I'm not going to confirm my decision, right? But it's likely that I'm leaning towards saving the chip. At this point, I'm thinking of saving the chip, right, and basically using it at a time when I think is a little bit better. And I don't think, and in that case, I may not use it on Haaland anymore. If I don't use it this week, right, I may want to see something more from City moving forward to actually put the chip on Erling Haaland, right? So maybe if they do really well up till game week 23, I could use it then, right? But I'm leaning away from doing that at this point, right? Ruhil says Kane for Darwin. I'll cover that later on. It's basically a section that we're going to talk about Kane in detail, right? Okay, so for the next portion of this video, or this stream essentially, we're going to talk a little bit about Man City assets, right? Because a lot of people are going to consider bringing in a Man City asset. I don't blame anyone. I'm thinking about a Man City asset myself, right? But it is so tough. Right, it is so tough to decide which Man City asset we should bring in. So what I've done here basically, right, is I've taken the game week 17 to game week 19 stats, right? Of course, via Fantasy Football Hub. Excuse me. Via Fantasy Football Hub. And basically what I've done all this data may end up looking useless at the end of the day, right? Because Pep Roulette is just, the way it is just unpredictable. But currently, I have on the screen right now the stats that they've had this season, the amount of minutes they've played. All this is in the Premier League, and also the expected goal involvement, right, which includes XG, XA, and also the expected points for the next 6 games. So I think when we look at this data, right, firstly, let me caveat first, right, there's no Man City asset at this point that is nailed, right, other than maybe KDB, who I wouldn't say is nailed as well, right, that he could get the odd rotation here and there when they face easy games, right, but I think Erling Haaland is someone that I think will start pretty much almost every game, right, and then Ederson. I think everyone else is a gamble, so I'm gonna leave it as I'm gonna put that caveat there first, and basically at this point, right, we'll analyze the data a bit. So usually in any normal situation with other teams especially, this data is usually sufficient enough to tell us who to go for, right? But because it's City, right, this could be entirely useless. But let's try to break this down, right? So starts, right? John Stones has had 3 out of 3 starts, 270 minutes, right? Let's ignore his goal involvement, right? That's more for attackers. And then the expected points is 33.5, right, for John Stones. So the thing with John Stones is that he's currently declared as not fit, right? He wasn't even fit to be in the squad or be in the team for the game against Southampton yesterday, right? So John Stones is out of the equation, right? So that leaves the next player on the list. There's also Akanji, right? Akanji is 3 out of 3 starts this season, right, in the Premier League, 270 minutes as well, right, and his expected points is pretty good as well, right. Same with Akanji, just that Akanji has had only 2 out of 3 starts this season, right. So we'll touch on Cancelo and Lewis now, and basically we'll see the minutes later on, because I've broken down the minutes to essentially how each player has had how many minutes each player has had across the whole post World Cup kind of games that Man City has had, right, including all the cup games, the FA Cup games, the AFL Cup games. I've included that in the next graphic, right, but basically we see that Rico Lewis has taken out a big chunk of Cancelo's minutes, sorry. So at this point, it's really tough to say whether he would go with Cancelo, right. Cancelo played 90 minutes yesterday. I don't know whether he's going to stick with Cancelo. On top of that, Rico Lewis as well, he's always topped up young players, and then suddenly he just leaves them on the bench again, right? So it could go either way, and I think at this point, if I'm looking to bring in someone, Cancelo and Rico Lewis definitely wouldn't be on my list right now, right? John Stones is also injured, so it's probably looking like it's either going to be Akanji or Ake, right? So at this point, I think Ake seems like the one who is a little bit of a better option for me. I think you see, at this point again, it's all guesswork, right, basically. But I feel like Akanji is someone who has kind of made the left back spot his, I guess, right. When Rico Lewis plays in the right back spot, most of the time we see Ake filling in at left back, right, so that we have one a more defensive minded player on the left, right, and then Rico Lewis on the right, right. So obviously the other combination that they have is Kyle Walker and Cancelo. Right, so these are the two situations that I see, and basically I think Ake at this point in time, previously when I prepared the material for this stream, right, I basically felt that Stones was the best one to go for, but now that he's unfit, now that he's wasn't even fit to be in the squad yesterday, I think Ake is the one that I will go for next. Right, so those are defenders, and those are kind of my thoughts currently, right. But as for attackers, I'm assuming that everyone has Haaland already. So as for attackers, we have Kevin De Bruyne, Mahrez, and Foden. Right, so Kevin De Bruyne, as you guys can see on the table, right, everything is dark green for him. Right, so 3 out of 3 starts, 270 minutes, 2.8 goal involvement, and 49.9 expected points over the next 6 game weeks. And this includes doubles as well. So when you look at this, I think it's pretty clear to see that the ideal option to have based on data is Kevin De Bruyne, right? Based on data. But something about Riyad Mahrez recently. I know Riyad Mahrez, when we talk about Riyad Mahrez, a lot of us kind of think about him being a non-FPL option because he's just so risky with minutes, right? But at this point, right, Riyad Mahrez for me, I feel, is a little bit of a better FPL asset to have than Kevin De Bruyne, right? So Kevin De Bruyne he's guaranteed minutes. That's a good thing about him. But the thing is, his role this season, I feel, has changed into someone who's more the creator, right? Which I'll touch on more later when we're talking about Salah to KDB. But Kevin De Bruyne, I feel, is someone who has become a lot more of a playmaker, someone who looks for the assist for Haaland, right? He creates the chances for them. I think he has been taking a lot he has been having a lot lesser big chances himself as well, right? As we saw last season, he had the threat for goals, he had the threat for assist as well. But for this season, right, it's looking as if his points mainly come from assist, right? So if we break down the stats as well, he's had 3 goals this season and 10 assists, right? As compared to Salah, which I'll touch on later on, 6 goals and 4 assists for Salah. So basically, Kevin De Bruyne gets his points from assists, and that's not really a good FPL asset in that perspective, right? But because of all the surrounding factors for secured minutes, right, and how he creates lots of chances, right, and Haaland is at the end of these chances, and he's a really good finisher as well, right? So because of all these surrounding factors, we could find ourselves being forced into going for Kevin De Bruyne, right? So that's one of the things that are going on in my mind right now. But Mahrez, I think if I find it in me to go for him as a punt, I think he could pay off, right? He could pay off. Right, I'll get to the chat later on. But MC Chong says Stones might be injured, making things harder. Yeah, exactly right. So I think at this point for defenders, as I mentioned just now, I think Ake and Kanji would be the ones that I go for. Right, so obviously safety-wise, right, for attackers, it's Kevin De Bruyne. I think we all already know this, right? But Mahrez, I think, looks like a really decent punt, right? 2.6 XGI for the past 3 games, right? So it's looking pretty good. I think we could. No one can predict accurately at this point, right? So it's pretty much when we're going for city assets at this point, we're just trying to guess who has the best minutes, right? So I'm gonna put up a graphic now, right? For those of us who kind of want to get involved in Pep Roulette and kind of predict who is gonna start and when, right? So what we have on the screen right now are the minutes of all the players, right? And then all the games that they've played so far since the World Cup, right? So there's Stones, Ake, exactly the same players as the previous graphic, right? And then we have all the way from the EFL Cup game against Liverpool right after the World Cup, and then there's Leeds, Everton, Chelsea in the FA Cup, and then the Southampton game yesterday. So when we're looking at this graphic, right, once again, it could be entirely useless because we can't predict when who is going to start, right? But basically, I've kind of taken a couple of players out of the equation already, right? Grealish, I don't think he's an FPL asset. I think I don't think that Grealish is someone that we should go for, right? So once again, I've only left these 3 attackers there, and then up front, and then on the upper end of the table, it's all the defenders, right? So from this graphic as well, I think this graphic also helps to kind of highlight how Rico Lewis has taken a big chunk of Cancelo's minutes, right? So in the EFL Cup, 90 minutes for him, 0 minutes for Cancelo, 68 minutes for Lewis in the Leeds game, 22 minutes for Cancelo. So it's quite symmetrical, I guess, or is correlated basically, right? That Rico Lewis takes a chunk out of Cancelo's minutes. So at this point, I think it's hard for us to say who's going to start, right? That I've already said this multiple times, right? But Ake and Akanji, as well as Kevin De Bruyne, right, came on yesterday when Man City were losing to Southampton 2-0 at halftime, right? So you could see them as players that Pep actually trusts, right, to get things done or to get games won. So from that perspective, right, Ake and Akanji I would feel are good options as well, right, if you're going for Man City defenders. And once again, I would lean towards Ake, right? Cancelo got 90 minutes yesterday, so as a Cancelo owner myself, I don't even know if that means that he's going to get minutes, if he's even going to get two 90-minute games. I think that's unlikely, right? But now there's doubts in my mind about whether he's even going to get one game or one start. Right, so currently, these are my thoughts about the defenders. Right now, as for the attackers, I think Mahrez got fully rested yesterday. Foden played 90 minutes. So for Mahrez, the natural thinking would be that because he got rested in this Southampton game, right, that he would start the next few. Right, so you would think that he would start against Man United, and you would think that he could start against Spurs as well. Right, but at the end of the day, Pep also said in a quote that he's gonna try something ridiculous. He's gonna try something different, right, to try and get at Ten Hag, right? But you never know. That could be just mind games as well, right? So at the end of the day, it's all up in the air, right? But if I were to go for Man City assets at this point, right, nailedness is Kevin De Bruyne. Right, and I would be looking, right, to do Salah to De Bruyne. Actually, that's the next section. Right, but I'll be looking to do Salah to De Bruyne simply because if I'm going to go for a Man City asset now, I'm going to need to hold this Man City asset all the way, right, from game week 20 now all the way till game week 23, right, where they also double there. Right, so the two fixtures after that in game week 24 and 25 as well are Forest and Bournemouth. So essentially, I would think that going for a City midfielder that is nailed right now, so that's Kevin De Bruyne, is someone that I can keep all the way for the long term. Right, so that's playing into my mind right now, and I do like Mahrez as a punt. Right, I do like Mahrez as a punt. I think he could do quite well. Right, but it's just that for the structure of my team, right, I don't think I have a lot of bench options that I can go for a punt and then have another player on the bench to come on. Right, my bench is pretty thin. Right, I will release a team selection video tomorrow, but basically my bench is pretty thin. Right, some of you guys are asking, have I made my transfer? I haven't yet. I'm still waiting for double gaming announcements, which we could get during the stream. Right, if we do get double gaming announcements during the stream, please let me know, right, in the chat. What do you think about Ben Mee, Brentford? I don't think I will be for this week. I don't think I'll be looking at any other double game week players because I would probably think that most teams, I feel, right, would have about 3 to 4 double game week players, and you could do with a couple more, right? You could do with 1 or 2 more using your free transfer. I don't think I will use a transfer to bring in someone like Ben Mee this week, right? So basically at this point, right, what we have on the screen right now is I guess a graphic to kind of try and predict, right, what's going to happen. Right, Bosco says, in my opinion, Mahrez will only start one match. Pep can put Bernardo Silva, Foden on the right. Pep is always unpredictable. Right, Ake is a great option right now. Might possibly play left back as well. So I think the way it goes right now, right, I kind of agree that Mahrez may just get one match. There's so many people that could fill in on the right as well. And then Alvarez could chip in and get some minutes too. Right, so that is definitely something that's playing on my mind. Right, Ake as well, I feel like he's the best option after John Stones got injured. Right, Stuart Wallace says, if I have Ward, Mitrovic, Gabriel, and Lewis my bench, would you consider playing the bench boost in game week 20? I wouldn't use any other chip this week other than the triple captainship potentially. Right, but I'll cover the chips later or in detail later on. But basically, as I mentioned at the start of the stream, I think wildcarding is likely to be either game week 29 or 33. Right, and bench boosting would then be really good if we bench boost right after we wildcard in 33. Right, so we bench boost in 34. That's one of the possibilities. And there are bigger double game weeks as well. Right, game week 34 and 37 will be bigger double game weeks than this current double game week 20 that we have, which honestly isn't that good as well. Right, this current double game week that we have, I don't think it's that good. Right, so I don't think we should be ripping our squads apart or using chips to kind of get as many players. I think we just navigate it, especially if there are double game week 21 announcements. So currently on the screen, this is what we have, right? And honestly, there's no way we can predict Pep Roulette. right? But if I was gonna go for a City defender at this point, I think it'll be Ake, right? I currently have Cancelo, right? So I am thinking about it. The only other player that I would take Cancelo out for is Luke Shaw, right? So I could do Cancelo to Luke Shaw or Cancelo to Ake if I do decide to remove Cancelo. Right, so Foden as well, I don't think I would go for him. He's played so many minutes in recent games. Obviously, minutes don't really tell us who's going to start, right? But I would assume that he could be rested against United, and then that only means one potential start for him. So that's what I'm thinking, right? But as I've said, right, I don't think we can accurately predict Pep's thinking right now. All right, so I'll leave this on the screen for a bit. Right, I'll leave this on the screen for a bit for those of you guys who wanna take a look. Right, GV says great graphic. I'm glad you like it. Right, hopefully it helps you guys. But I hope it doesn't play too much into. I hope this doesn't play too much into kind of predicting Pep roulette. I kind of don't want you guys to use this as kind of a baseline to go and predict Pep roulette, because no matter what happens, or what has happened, or how many minutes these players have gotten, right, there's no indication that they may not start the next game immediately, and there's also no indication, right, that they could be benched right after, right? So one example is the Leeds game and the Everton game, right? So if you look at Kevin De Bruyne, he got 90 minutes in both games, but before the restart happened, I actually felt that Kevin De Bruyne would be rested in either Leeds or Everton, so that he could play in that Chelsea game, as well as the FA Cup against Chelsea. So had I gone with my prediction, right, that would have been horrible, right? Because in the end, he played both games when I expected him to be rested in either the Leeds game or the Everton game, right? So once again, right, really, really dangerous. So I wouldn't go anywhere near predicting Pep roulette. Right? But I'll leave this on the screen for those of you guys who want to take a look. Why is Haaland not scoring goals in recent games? How do you rate his recent performance? I think he's popped in and out of the squad recently, right? He's been arrested for the double game week, I would be thinking. And I can't really blame him for not scoring against Southampton. I think City just looked really poor, right? Yeah, I don't think that was a good game for him, but I don't think we can blame just Haaland alone. Right? I think it's a whole team situation right now. Mount to Mitoma, Greenwood to Kane, 3-5-2. Interesting. From a City fan and Cancelo owner, City defense isn't great. Yeah, I completely agree with Bosco. I think at this point, City defense doesn't look convincing, that's for sure. Right, so it's likely that I could go for Shaw. I could do Cancelo to Shaw, I could do Cancelo to Ake, but if I do Cancelo to Ake, it's mainly with the double-double in mind. So -4 for Edison, worth it? I wouldn't do that. Alright, so let's move on to the next portion so that this doesn't go on for too long, so that people can watch it as a replay. So I want to talk a little bit about Salah to Kevin De Bruyne, which I think is on a lot of people's mind right now. Is also on my mind. So currently, there's a couple of things surrounding this decision, right? And the first thing is whether we get a double for Liverpool, right? If we get a double for Liverpool in game week 21, I think I would want Salah for that, right? So it largely depends on whether we get that. If we don't get that, then I think Salah to KDB becomes a lot more obvious, right? So, but just speaking about them in terms of FPL assets wise, I think Salah is someone that I think is a better FPL asset than De Bruyne, right? And for a couple of reasons as well. Right, so as we can see, the graphic in the middle here, right, is basically looking at their statistics over the first. For this graphic, I've gone for the whole season basically, so 19 game weeks, right, and how they've kind of chopped up these statistics here, right. So it's pretty clear Kevin De Bruyne is more the chance creator, right. Through balls, crosses, chances created, big chances are all. Expected assists as well. Those are all his strong suits and basically where he kind of gets most of his points. Right? For Salah though, his expected goals, big chances, shots in the box, shots on target, right? Shots in the box and shots on target are the key metrics that I always look at, right? To see if Salah has been getting taking a decent amount of shots so that he can score, right? I know that based on shots, based on the shot statistic, right? Kevin De Bruyne is kind of matching Salah, right? But for that, I think we do need to see that if Kevin De Bruyne is taking a lot of shots similar to Salah, but not a lot of them are in the box, right? As you guys can see, it's really little in the box. So he's basically shooting from very far, right? So obviously the chances of that going in isn't that great as well. So he's getting lower quality chances to score goals, but he's creating a lot of good chances. So that's basically what you get with Kevin De Bruyne. I think a large portion of his points are going to be from chance creation. It's going to be from assists. But as for Salah, I think we're going to get more goals from him, right? Throughout the whole season, their statistic is basically Salah with 6 goals and 4 assists, De Bruyne with 10 assists and 3 goals. Right? So I think the stats kind of speak for itself. So if I want to choose one, I think Salah is definitely, from an FPL perspective, I feel the better asset. The problem is Liverpool right now, they just can't finish their chances, right? But I would say that from this perspective, I really prefer Salah, right? But if they don't have that double, I think I may have to remove him for Kevin De Bruyne simply because, right, Kevin De Bruyne will have this double in 20 and the double in 23 as well, right? So I simply can't turn that down, right? And if that's the case, I do Salah to De Bruyne, I would pretty much lock in that third City asset already, right? I would have Haaland, De Bruyne, and then Cancelo, right? Cancelo, of course, I could move him on to another City defender or Luke Shaw, right? So these are what I'm thinking at this point with Salah and De Bruyne, and it largely depends on whether we get those double game week announcements, right? So that is basically at this point where I'm at with Salah and De Bruyne, right? As you guys can see, the ownership is pretty similar as well. Right, so I don't think you can go too wrong with switching from one to the other from an effective ownership standpoint. I think it would still affect your ranks similarly if you don't have either, right? But at this point, I think if I'm gonna go for a third premium, right, it wouldn't be. I would have either of Salah and De Bruyne together with Haaland, and my third premium would be Harry Kane, right? So I wouldn't go for Salah and De Bruyne and then Haaland. I don't think that's what I would do. Right, so I think this kind of leads in nicely as well, right, to the next section, right, which is Harry Kane, which is whether we should take a hit for Harry Kane or not. So I want to break this down in two perspectives, right? So firstly, I want to look at it in a team perspective, and I also want to look at it in an individual perspective. So from a team standpoint, right, what we are seeing here is basically what I've done. Is I've basically taken the team statistics, right, for the first 3 game weeks after the restart. Right? I don't want to look too far back because I think those pre-World Cup data, right, is pretty much based on how the team was shaping and looking like before the World Cup. But I want more recent data. So since the World Cup has ended from game week 17 to 19, right, we're looking here at shots on target, we're looking at big chances, expected goals, and then the number of goals that they've scored, right? So basically what I intend to do with this table is basically look at the overperformance or underperformance of these teams, right? So let's take a look at Man City first, right? So 15 shots on target this season and 14 big chances, right? So in the span of 3 games, they've accumulated 7.28 expected goals, right? And they've only scored 5. So basically the delta, right, is 2.28, right? So basically they're underperforming a little bit, right? They are basically not getting as many goals or not converting as many of the chances that they should have, right? As compared to maybe further down the line, you look, Liverpool has 7.66 expected goals. They scored 6 goals. For United, they have 7.07 and they have 7 goals, right? So it's pretty similar there. So you get the idea that basically what I'm looking at is whether there's an overperformance or an underperformance for these teams. Right, so for Liverpool and City, I think it's pretty alright, it's pretty close. For Newcastle, they actually are creating a lot of chances, right? And their expected goals is 5.92 and they've only scored 3. So it's almost half, and I would say that they are severely underperforming. There's basically a lot more goals to be had for Newcastle. That's what I feel, right? Based on the data at least. Right. As for United, 20 shots on target, 10 big chances, and as we mentioned, right, 7.07 expected goals and 7 goals. So these first 4 teams that we're looking at, or first 5, right? Let's cover Arsenal as well, right? Arsenal is doing pretty well, but they are overperforming a little bit, right? So 5.73, right, expected goals, and they've converted 7. So there's a little bit of overperformance there, right? As you compare to maybe City, Liverpool, Newcastle, and Manchester United, they're pretty much all doing pretty all right. Newcastle with underperformance, and Arsenal with overperformance, right? So now we zoom in on Spurs, right? And this is the one we want to look at. And when I'm considering, let's say, an asset to bring in, I just want to make sure that I'm able to bring them in at a time when the team is doing well as well. They're creating good enough chances to keep this up for the long term. So Harry Kane and Spurs, right? Basically 16 shots on target and only 3 big chances, right? And that is I guess when you compare to this table, right, really, really low. Right, only 3 big chances in the first 3 games, when other teams like City, Liverpool, Newcastle, United, Arsenal, they're putting up much better numbers, right? And these are 3 big chances. These stats are against pretty easy opponents, I would say, right? Crystal Palace, right? Brentford as well. I think basically they haven't looked good, and this could boil down to a lot of other reasons, right, which we'll touch on later. But basically, the numbers don't look good for Spurs, and from an XG perspective, it's a severe overperformance. Basically, 3.81 expected goals and 6 goals. So, from this perspective, they shouldn't be getting as many goals as they've had, right? Basically, but they've converted more, right? And I guess you can say that that's the Harry Kane effect, right? When he doesn't need a lot of good chances to score, right? And basically, all he needs is that one sniff, and he can get in, right? And that's basically what we are seeing from the data right now. Right, and I think even without the data, we can kind of tell from watching the games as well, right? When we watch the games, we can also see that it's pretty straightforward, right? Spurs aren't doing that well, right? But in the recent game, they got the result, right? 4-0 against Crystal Palace, when the whole first half, they didn't have a look in at all, right? So these things can happen, right, with Spurs, right? Because they do have the quality, but whether they can keep it up for Manchester United and Man City, for their double in game week 20, whether they can keep it up, right? I'm not so sure, right? They have Arsenal, and then they have Man City, right? So these aren't great double game week games to have, right? So can they keep this up against tough opponents when they couldn't even do it against weaker opponents, right? So that is definitely something that's playing to my mind right now, whether they can keep it up, right? So that is basically from the team perspective, right? But if I take a look now at the individual perspective, right, and see on his own, right, in his own right, how has he been doing, right? So on the screen right now, I basically have the players who've had the biggest chances, right? Obviously, Darwin Núñez is at the top, but I have the statistics for basically the players in the Premier League who have the the most big chances, right, in this span of game week 17 to game week 19, right? So Darwin Núñez at the top is a severe underperformance right now, as we already know, right? We already know, and it's become a little bit of a meme, right? 7 shots on target, 7 big chances, 3.32 expected goals, right, for Darwin Núñez in this period, and he's gotten 0 goals. So basically, what this says is that he's supposed to score a lot more goals than he actually did. And I don't think it takes the stats to tell this, for us to deduce this, right? So I think at the end of the day, further down the line, this XG will catch up to him, right? This eventually, I think he will kind of, they will kind of meet, right, where the goals and the expected goals will kind of be similar, right? So in general, that's just how things that's how the stats kind of play out in the long run, right? But it's whether we will be there to catch that rise or not, and I think it's pretty tough to say when it's going to happen. Right? He doesn't look very clinical at all, right? That's for sure. So Erling Haaland next, 6 shots on target, 7 big chances, right, and 3.04 expected goals and 3 goals. So that's where we see the delta is pretty low, right? 0.04. So there's no severe underperformance there. There's also pretty much, we're looking at numbers that he should be getting, right? He's getting good chances. He's got an expected goals of 3, and he scores 3 goals. I think that's what we're used to seeing, right? Not Darwin Núñez at 3.32 expected goals and then 0 goals. Then we have Mitrovic and Mitoma. So Mitoma is someone that's pretty interesting as well, right? He's only 4.9, right? But he's gotten 4 big chances, 1.89 expected goals, and he's gotten 2 goals. So he's pretty close to what he should be getting, and basically he's getting those good chances, right? For Salah, 1.62 expected goals and 1 goal, right? So pretty close as well, right? But if you look at Harry Kane, right, 1.21 expected goals and 3 goals for Harry Kane. So I think this largely comes down to the Crystal Palace game as well. We're only looking 3 game weeks back, but I think this largely comes down to that Crystal Palace game where he got a lot of returns, right, and he scored a good number as well in that game. And basically, I'm not so sure he can keep this up. Right now, I framed this whole thinking is into how stats wise Kane should not have been getting the points that he's been getting, but he's still doing it, right? But he's still being consistent, right? So that's how we're kind of framing this thinking right now. But I kind of want to make it a little bit more balanced as well. So for this next portion, right, we basically just have this last slide to have before we go on to the quickfire Q&As. But basically, I just want to consider other factors as well, right? Just beyond the stats, I want to know surrounding factors as to whether we should bring him or not, because I am actually considering him, right? So I just want to make sure that I'm making an informed decision. So is Harry Kane worth a hit? And there are a couple of good reasons for that. So I've listed them here so that I don't forget them, right? Because I did want to mention them to you guys on the stream, right? So 15 goals and 4 assists in 18 games, right? So that is pretty much the hallmark of consistency, right? If Erling Haaland wasn't in FPL, I think we would say that Kane is pretty much essential in all of our teams, right? He would be the Erling Haaland. So in that perspective, I think we can kind of think of it as him being fixture proof, right? He's played a good amount of opposition in these 18 games, and he's still accumulated 15 goals and 4 assists, right? So from that thinking, I think that's one of the good reasons why we could go for him, right? Fixture proof, right? Secondly, some players are coming back, right? They're coming back, and they would be back in the team and basically back in the squad, right? Ready to play for Spurs. So Kulusevski and Bissouma, they're back in training, right? So Kulusevski, I would say, is the one that we're more focused on right now. Kulusevski is someone that really helps the Spurs attack, I feel, right? So I would say that's one of the good reasons why we can go for Harry Kane, right? Kulusevski really helps Kane's output as well, right? And then another factor that kind of played into my mind, right, is how Arsenal and Man City, these are games that I would feel Spurs won't have a lot of the ball, right? I think they will sit pretty deep. I mean, they could come out in a different fashion, right? They could just go all out. But I think what we would see is that possession wise, right? I would think that Arsenal and Man City are going to have more possession, and in that sense, right, this counter-attacking play could actually suit Kane, right? Because Spurs, we know, are generally a more counter-attacking team, right? So in this sense, right, counter-attacking play where Kane kind of drops deep, feeds the ball to Son, right, they start the counter-attack. We see this happen so much last season as well, in the earlier parts of this season too, right? This actually suits this double game week, right, where they have Arsenal and they also have Man City, right? So that's one of the reasons why I intend to, at least at this point, right, I'm thinking of bringing Kane in, right, for a hit. Yes, definitely for a hit. I think for my team, I can only get him with a -4 at the minimum, right? So at this point, I think there are a lot of good reasons, basically, right? But in terms of why we shouldn't bring Kane in, right, there are a couple of reasons that kind of draw me back from it, right? So Bentancur and Richarlison not spotted in training whatsoever, and I think Bentancur has been a big miss for Spurs. I think a lot of their drop-off in performance since they came back from the World Cup is largely due to Bentancur not being in that midfield spot, helping them to get control of the midfield and basically kind of control the game, create more chances and get more involved in the game, bring the whole team into the game basically. I don't see that happening a lot because Bentancur has been missing, and I think Højbjerg and Bissouma haven't been doing a good job at trying to do that. Right. As for Richarlison, I think he's not spotted as well. Also another big miss, right? But that I think in general, right, it's just they could do without Richarlison. I think Kulusevski, Son and Kane are good enough, right? So I think for me, Bentancur is the main one that is someone that I would prefer to be in the squad if I want to look for consistent returns from Spurs attackers, right? So secondly, the 4 yellow card situation, right? So Bosco mentioned in the chat, right? After game week 19, the amount of yellows will reset, right? So he'll get a yellow now, he won't be banned. Well, at this point, we're in game week 20, right? And what it's looking like is if he does get a yellow card for the first game, right, which is the Arsenal game, right, which is North London derby, right? So one that is usually heated, right? So we could see him get a yellow card. There's the same situation as Mitrovic basically, where if he gets a yellow card in that game, he's going to miss the next one against City. So at this point, there is risk involved in bringing Kane in, and we have to accept that. And if I do bring him in, I think I have to accept this as well, right? That I could see another situation of Mitrovic, who I just brought in, right? We could see a situation where he's going to get yellow card for the first game, he's going to miss out the next game, right? So that's one of the risks involved, right? And as I mentioned, the stats don't back this, right? We covered it extensively just now in the previous section, right? Where the stats don't really back Harry Kane delivering in the next few games or Spurs just delivering in the next few games. It just doesn't back it, right? So at this point, I think there are a lot of good reasons to go for them. There's also some reasons to draw back. And at this point, where I'm standing, right, is that I think I would likely bring him in still, right? And I think one of the main reasons for this, right, is because I would eventually want him in the long term. I think I can bring him in game week 23, right, where game week 23 they play Leicester, and then there on it looks pretty good for Tottenham. So I could wait till then, right? But even so, right, he does have that Fulham game in between game week 22 and where they play City again, and then now game week 20 where they have a pretty tough double, right? So the reason that's kind of pushing me towards bringing him in, right, is that eventually I will want him long term, right? So if I bring him in now for a hit, basically I'm giving him more time to kind of repay that hit, because I would get his points all the way from now all the way until whenever he stays in my team, right? So giving him more time in my team gives him more chance of repaying that hit, right? And this is a double, right? He could pretty much immediately return, right? That's one of the possible ways that I'm thinking about it as well, right? So let me know what you guys think, right? Those of you guys who are watching, I want to know your thoughts on this whole situation, right? I've seen GV in the chat says he's already transferred Kane in, right? I think that is completely, I wouldn't advise against as well. I think it's completely fine, right? Philip says, should I bring in Harry Kane? I mean, at this point, am I bringing in Harry Kane? I think I am. It's looking like I will, right? I'll release the team selection video tomorrow, but it's looking likely that I'm very tempted to bring him in, right? Definitely, simply because of the reasons that I mentioned just now, right? Looking forward to seeing him being banned as a Kane non-owner and a City fan, right? Okay, so pretty much this is what I have for today. I hope I don't overrun for too long. I'm mindful of the time as well. It's 52 minutes already, right? So I just want to leave a good amount of time for you guys to have just some quick fire questions, right? So if you have any questions, do drop them in the chat right now, right? But for now, I just want to cover some last questions, right? And I think a couple of you guys asked about dowing to Kane, right? Philip just said the only way you can get to Kane, right, is through Nunes. So we're going to cover this in the last quick fire question here, right? So once I'm done with this section, then I'll just get to the questions in the chat, right? So just stack them up. So currently, is it worth taking hits right now? and how many. So I think this game week is actually a good game week to take hits, right? Because it sets you up for double game week 20, and you can also take hits that set you up for 23, because those two are the current double game weeks that you know, right? So with these two in mind, right, you can actually take hits that can immediately or almost immediately pay off, right? So I think use this game week as a good excuse, I guess, to use use a couple of hits if you need to address your team, but make sure that these hits I would think have to be improving your team, basically, right? Don't take hits that bring in players that are doubtful or that may not help you in the long run. I think that is something that I would advise, right? And it's now the time for the wild card, the free hit, or the bench boost. I think, as I mentioned already just now at the start, I don't think this is the time for any of these chips, right? There are bigger and better double game weeks further down the line. There are also blank game weeks, right? So definitely not a time to wild card, to free hit, or to bench boost this week, right? So a couple of other things that I'm thinking, right, is for the triple captainship. I already mentioned just now that it could block you, right? But there are a couple of I guess I've seen a couple of people going for it, right? And I wouldn't advise against going for the triple captain now, right? But as I mentioned, in general, I think it's a chip that you can use when you think the player that you're putting it on will score the most points, right? So taking the attention away from Haaland, whether we should captain him or not, I think in general, when we're thinking about this triple captain chip, I don't think we need to be so narrow-minded as to say we need to captain Haaland for sure, right? And it's just when. I think there's a good chance that we can find better opportunities or better players to put it on, right? So currently I'm leaning towards not using any chips at all, right? Even the triple captain chip. I'm thinking of saving all the chips for future game weeks. Would I punt on Bruno Fernandes? So I wouldn't, right? I think at this point, the United assets that I would have is pretty much only two, actually. I wouldn't even triple up on United for this game week, right? I would go for Luke Shaw and Marcus Rashford, and that's pretty much the only United assets that I think I would want, right? If you already have both, happy days. I don't think I would go for Martial even, right? So Martial is actually fit, right? He just got rested, I guess, left out of the squad to rest, right? Ten Hag actually clarified that, right? So basically, I think Martial is an okay option to have, right? But I wouldn't go so far as to take a hit for him. He's someone that if I have, I would keep, and that's pretty much it, right? For Bruno Fernandes, to answer the question, I don't think I would punt on Bruno Fernandes, right? I think the value he takes up, right, is close to 9.8. I don't think he's worth that much money, right? And lastly, to answer Philip and the last question, right, which is whether I would sell Darwin for Kane. Now, the problem with Darwin for Kane, right, is that as I mentioned just now, right, Darwin is actually severely underperforming, and there will be a time when the numbers will eventually catch up, right? I've over the season, right, over the past few seasons as well, I use a lot of data to kind of back my decisions, and I think in general the numbers always tend to equalize, I guess, or normalize, right? So the XG will catch up to Nunes, and I think he will get some good returns, right? So if the only way that you can get to Kane is through Nunes, I think I may not do that, right? But I wouldn't advise against doing it. I think I totally appreciate why you would want to do that, and if it's the only way, I guess you could argue that is possible. Right, so that's pretty much what I have. So I'm going to answer some of the questions before we end the stream. I think I just want to keep it within the hour. So hopefully you guys who have any questions, right, just quickly put it in the chat and I'll get to them right now after I get some water. So I wanted to do this in a video style, but I just wanted to get you guys' feedback and also see what you guys think about my thoughts. I think that will be a little bit more interactive. So if you guys do enjoy this format of a video, right, let me know, as opposed to actually putting it out as just a short, concise 10-minute video, right? Let me know what you guys actually think. Matthew says, so is Ake a better option than Stones now? Well, at this point, I think I wouldn't go for Stones for sure, right? He's not set to be fit. So I think that leaves only two other City defenders that I would go for, right? Either Ake or Akanji. And I think Akanji, the reason why I'm a little bit less inclined to go for him, right, is that there's Akanji, right? Diaz is injured at this point. There's also Diaz is injured and Stones is injured. So Akanji and Laporte look pretty good, right? They look pretty good for minutes moving forward. But I think, as I mentioned, I want an asset that I can keep all the way up till game week 23 where they have the double, right? So I don't think, and Stone's injury actually isn't that bad, right? Based on reports, basically. So I think Ake is a little bit better of a shout just because I don't want to get involved when all the centre backs come back. So to answer your question, I think Ake definitely a better option than Stones at this point. Right, Bosco says Kane is so consistent in my opinion. Always a great option as Mr. Stable. Exactly. I mean, exactly why I think even though the data doesn't back him, I mean, he's Kane. He's Harry Kane, right? And there's a lot of this talk on Twitter about how in a North London derby, Kane always gets returns, right? And how against Man City, Spurs is pretty much an Achilles heel for Man City. Alright, so I mean there's a lot of narratives going on, right? But basically looking at the data, it doesn't look good for Kane. Right? But you could do worse than to bring him in just because if eventually I already want to have him, right, I can't just bring him in now. Right? I'm not opposed to that at all. Akanji, Stones or Lewis? Well, definitely not Stones, definitely not Lewis. So in that case then Akanji. Right? But as I said just now, I think it boils down to whether you go for Akanji or Ake. I think they're both 5 mil, right? So they're pretty alright. Hi Jonathan, thank you guys for coming down. By the way, if you guys haven't already, please drop a like on the stream and subscribe as well so that this stream can get to more people. Hopefully, it helps the channel to grow. Right? I really appreciate you guys coming down on a Thursday. Right? I don't usually stream. Right? I'm just giving this a try to see if you guys enjoy this kind of content. Like an interactive video, I guess. Shazwan says, Darlow injured. Are you sure he'll play against Crystal Palace or should I buy Wan-Bissaka or Varane? At this point, I don't think I would go for any other United defender other than Luke Shaw. Right? It's pretty, I guess, a boring answer, but that is really the safest play for me, I feel. Right? Darlow, what he said is basically that it may, for Darlow, what Ten Hag has said, right, is that he took him off as a precaution, right, but you don't know the extent of the injury. You also don't know whether Wan-Bissaka, who has played pretty well, right, whether he could get more minutes, right, could get minutes away from Darlow, right. So I think he's made enough of a statement to be rotated together with Darlow, right. So initially I wanted to go for Darlow. He's a bit cheaper, 4.7, right, but because of his, I guess, potential injury and also Wan-Bissaka, so I'm leaning away from that, right? So that just leaves Luke Shaw for me. So pretty much the only defender I will go for, and I wouldn't double on United defense as well. Right? I think that's worth mentioning. So that's why just Luke Shaw then. Yeah, just got Leo Cheng says, just got Digne in last week, 0 in the bank, looking to get rid of him. My plan is now Digne plus Almiron to Ben White plus a Brighton asset, keep Almiron, and Digne plus Ward to White and Ortega. So the issue with Brighton assets right now is that their double looks uncertain, right? And Ben has actually given the probabilities and it's not looking good for Brighton anymore, right? That double for Brighton that we felt was gonna happen in game week 21, as well as the double for Arsenal that we thought was gonna happen, is unlikely that they're going to happen right now. And the double that is likely to happen, or the most likely to happen, is actually that Liverpool double. So I'm waiting for that, and I will kind of wait and see whether it happens, because that will affect whether I go Salah to KDB or not, right? But at this point in time, right, I don't think I would go for a Brighton asset. I mean, I will wait for the announcements, right, but I don't think I will go for a Brighton asset or an Arsenal asset, right? And if you have Luka Dean, right, you can try and get in a doubler for this game week. If not, I think Botman is someone who's pretty attractive as well. Is Rashford captain instead of Haaland madness? Now, I'm not opposed to this at all, actually. Right, I think it will be a tough game, right? It will be a tough game against City, right? But Rashford could be on penalties. That's one. His home form is really good, and thirdly, City haven't been doing really well, right? In terms of all aspects, right? Attackingly and also defensively, they haven't been doing that well. Right, so I don't think Rashford captain instead of Haaland is absolute madness, but I would be captaining Haaland still, right? I would be captaining Haaland simply because from a rank perspective, right, I think it is a little bit safer, right? Considering that people are going to triple captain Haaland as well, right? I wouldn't want to take that big of a hit right now. Should I take a -4 from Bueno to Shaw? I think that's a decent upgrade. And I actually would do that. I would do that. Shazwan says he's also considering Rashford captain. Yeah, I mean, I won't convince you guys not to do it. I think there's a good reason to do it as well, right? But personally, I'm looking to captain Haaland. Salah to KDB and Darwin to who? Right, so I think Arthur, for your transfers, it's pretty much quite similar to mine, right? If Liverpool don't double, I'm looking to offload at least one, right? And that would likely be Salah, right, to KDB, right? And then I would keep Darwin. Right, if you want to take both out, if you are desperate to sell Darwin, then I think Kane is the best striker to have right now, right? So if I would assume that you will need some money in the bank for that, right? So it also depends how many hits you can take. And how much money you have. VJ says great stream. Right, thank you guys. Please let me know if you are in the chat. Please let me know whether you prefer this kind of content or you prefer it in a video where you can just watch anytime. Right, whether I should put it in a video and just basically run through the game week just as I had in the stream, right, in a concise manner. Right, so let me know, because I actually prefer to interact with you guys. I actually like talking to you guys, right? So I enjoy that. So Alex says, all I'm thinking is KDB could be rested against Wolves, so I'm definitely not taking Salah out for him. And you can go for Mahrez for double game week and move straight to another double in the next game week. I think that's a fair enough thinking, right? But that is pretty much booking in a transfer, no? And if I bring Mahrez in, I'll be tempted to keep him all the way, which then means that I would have to bear with the pain that comes with going for Mahrez. Already have Trippier, start Botman / Bueno / Luka Dean. I think Botman against Fulham, I think pretty good. Thoughts on Mitrovic, keep or sell, difficult fixtures ahead. So the player that I'm actually selling for Harry Kane is Mitrovic, right? Tony has asked, right, thoughts on Mitrovic. I'm looking to sell Mitrovic. I don't have my setup ready for my normal team selection deadline stream setup, so I can't show you guys my team. But at this point, what it's looking like is that I'm taking Mitrovic out for Harry Kane. I think that's something that I would do. That would definitely involve a -4, potentially a -8 as well, right? But I could be doing this, right? I'm actually tempted to do this. Richie says, which team do you support? I support Chelsea. I support Chelsea. The Blues, we're not doing too well right now. They're playing later against Fulham. I have Mason Mount. Hopefully Mason Mount can do something. Pull a madness. Kishan says, I'm actually at 7k rank, so very afraid to take a -4 hit for sure. I think at this point, you don't need to be too afraid, actually, of taking hits. I think a lot of people are going to be taking hits, right? A lot of people are going to be taking hits. So at the end of the day, if it improves your team for the long run, right, you don't need to be too worried about taking a -4 or taking a hit now, right? Because in the long run, if it pays off, right, it puts you in a better position and it puts your team in better shape as well. So whatever the rank, right, I could be at 7k as well, and I understand your fear, right? But taking the rank away and just thinking about team, I guess, shape, and also how it's going to look for the future, right? If it improves your team, right, then go for it, right? You could drop from maybe 7 to maybe 10, 11K, but because you already brought that player in and he consistently returns, it could be from 7 down to 11 and then all the way back up to 3.5, right? That's how I would think about hits as well. Take it if you need to improve your team. Right, so Philip says, do both if I can. Well, the question is, I don't think people would rewatch the streams. I don't know how many people actually rewatch streams, right? Leo Cheng says as well, both. If I have time, I like watching live. If I don't, I like watching short videos. I mean, that's pretty much essentially it. Right, Vosko says, I think you can try and clip some of the important parts from the stream, make it a short video. Quite convenient for someone who missed the stream to get their problem solved. I think that's a pretty decent suggestion as well. Shazan says, why not double on United defense? I think United will get clean sheet against Crystal Palace. I won't double on United defense for a couple of reasons, right? So, say I have Luke Shaw, right? I don't think it makes sense to bring in Varane or Lindelof or Licha. I don't think it makes sense to bring any of them in, right? And then Dalot is a risk because he could be rotated with Wan-Bissaka. So then that really doesn't leave a lot of good United double up options, right? If you're talking about De Gea plus Shaw, maybe, right? But if I was already going to make a keeper change, then it would be Ederson in, right? So that's my thinking. I understand that for this game week, it looks like they'll keep a clean sheet against Palace, but they have Arsenal coming up. Right? They have Arsenal coming up. Alex says, Akanji most nil and trusted by Pep for me. Even made Stones play right back when Walker was injured with Akanji centre back. I mean, I totally appreciate that. I mean, I rate Akanji as a defender myself as well. Right? But once again, we don't really know what's going to happen. We don't really know what's going to happen with Pep. MC Chong says we have Felix now. I mean, Felix is 7.5, by the way. Just before we started the stream, Felix is at 7.5. Right, so I don't think I'll go for him. Let's wait and see, right? Rashford triple captain, game week 22 if they get a double vs Palace and Leeds both at home. That is actually something I'm thinking about. Right, so you can pretty much rewind the stream to the part where I talked about triple captaining, and Rashford is there. It's actually in my considerations and maybe one of the reasons why I'm thinking about keeping it for now. Right, Kishan says, near game week you can make long videos as people have many questions and are obnoxious. Else you can make short videos every day. Alright, I mean, good suggestions, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me your thoughts, right, so that I can get more I guess information as to how I should progress with the channel. I appreciate you guys tuning in as well, especially if you guys are watching on the replay as well. Shazwan says, I use the free hit, that's why I prefer more double gaming players. If you're on a free hit, if you've already activated it, then I guess it makes sense. I mean, that's a whole different ball game. Alright, so I mean, thank you guys for letting me know. I may do another stream like this. I will think about it. If you guys have more thoughts on whether you enjoy it or not, you can drop me a DM on Twitter or Instagram, right? And we'll see whether I should keep up the streams or just change it to a video, right? But still appreciate you guys for coming down, right? Really, really appreciate it. So currently I'm going to hop on over to Discord, right, to have a chat with the members and the patrons, basically, to have their thoughts about what I've just presented on the stream, and also just basically answer any of the other questions that they've had after this stream. So if you guys are interested and you'd like to support the channel, you can just become a member, right? You click the join button beside the subscribe button or the link in the description. Right? So any of those links, the patron links or the channel membership links, will get you access to the Discord. Right? So do check them out if you are interested. And I'll just take a last couple of questions, right? Thoughts on Salah, Mount, Cancelo to Kevin De Bruyne, Bruno, and Ake. Salah, Mount, Cancelo, Kevin De Bruyne, Bruno, and Ake. I personally wouldn't go for Bruno. I understand the Ake and the Kevin De Bruyne move, but I don't think I would do the Bruno one. Right? If Liverpool get double gaming next week, would you consider Robbo or Trent for Cancelo? Possibly. Right? I could. I think it really comes down to whether we get the announcement or not. Right? And that's also why I've kind of delayed the team selection video so that I can release it tomorrow. Right? So we'll see what happens. Right? Maybe I should put a poll out as well for those of you who are here about the timing. Right? So whether I should stream at 1 p.m. UK time, which is now, or whether I should stream at a little later. Right, so I'm gonna put in UK timings, right? So 1 p.m. UK, there's also 4 p.m. UK, and there's also 6 p.m. UK. I mean, I think those are the times that I think I can make it. So let me know what you guys think. Right, I put up the poll. Right, hopefully you guys can drop your votes so that I can see what time I should stream. I think at this point, right, this timing seems, I guess, pretty okay. Right, 20 plus of you guys are here, but I think if there's a better timing and there are more people who are able to watch live at that point, and there's more interactions, then yeah, by all means, I can just change the timing. Currently 5 votes. 1 p.m. UK seems to be pretty alright for people. I guess it's the lunch break, right? Around the world as well, right? In other countries, I think in India, I think this time is pretty alright as well. In the Asian countries, I think it's alright. Oh, a lot of you guys actually like this time, right? 1 p.m. UK time. Okay, seems like we stick with it. Alex says, if you want more interaction, 6 p.m. definitely the best. Everyone is back from work. Well, everyone has voted 1 p.m. UK time. I guess I could try out different timings, right? Lots of Bosco says, in our time zone, 1 p.m. UK time is totally perfect. Well, that's because we are in Asia, and Bosco. I interact with Bosco a lot. He's a member for a while now. Really, really great interactions with him in the Discord. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I think this is I'm gonna leave it at this point. Once again, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to drop me a DM, right, on my socials. Right, but for now, I think this is pretty much it. Right, thank you guys for coming down. Right, I appreciate it, and I will catch you guys very soon. Deadline stream will be tomorrow, so I'm streaming again tomorrow. I actually wanted to do a game week preview stream, right? And I thought that the deadline was on Sunday. So that's pretty much why I've streamed today. If not, I would have streamed on Wednesday instead, but I think it works out anyways, right? So I'll stream again tomorrow, deadline stream. Team selection will be out as well, right? Some of you guys are saying in the chat, don't forget to like, right? Thank you, VJ. Alex says, depends where most of your audience is. 1 to 6 p.m. Get a more accurate response, you probably need to test streaming during different times. Exactly right. I think that is the accurate answer, right, MC Chong. I will be there at 1 p.m. Don't do it close to game time. We'll clash with lots of streamers. Yeah. So for deadline stream, it will be 3 hours before the deadline. I will always stream 3 hours before the deadline, if I can, right? And ideally, I do it for an hour, and then you guys can pop on over to FPL Raptor, FPL Harry. An hour later, you can pop over to FPL Mate. You can pop on over to Let's Talk FPL, FPL Focal, all the big guys, right? So I'll stream 3 hours before for an hour, and you guys can pop on over. Yeah, all right. See you tomorrow, guys. Right, so thank you guys for coming down. Please drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in another video, in another stream tomorrow, very soon. Bye-bye.